Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/PettyRevenge. In today's episode, Petty Revenge with a side of federal charges. She would be arrested today, but in 1971, I deserved this petty revenge. Petty Portia Revenge. The only free cakes are ruined ones? Okay. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Petty revenge with a side of federal charges. Way back in the ancient days of 1985, I was tormented by a complete tool named Jimmy who was one grade above me in high school in a small town where everyone knows everything about you and who said what? He was a redneck who hung out with similar losers who liked chewing tobacco. One day, he thought it would be fun to use my backpack that was hanging off the back of my chair as his spit cup. I was furious, but with his gang of cretins, there was nothing I could do about it. At least not until he turned 18 and hadn't graduated yet. In school, I heard him bragging to his friends that he stole some mail from the post office by reaching into his P.O. box and grabbing the mail in the adjoining boxes. He bragged that he got someone's social security check and cashed it, using the money to buy some Coors beer. Well, my friend's mother worked at the post office and I let her know and to keep an eye out. Sure enough, a couple of weeks later he got caught. The mailman inside saw his scrawny arm reaching in and just grabbed him by the wrist and bent it at a 90-degree angle, trapping his arm until the police showed up. He ended up not finishing school while in jail waiting trial and going to prison for the better part of a decade. Further investigation by the FBI, because it is a federal crime, got some of his asshole friends caught up as well. I moved away right after high school and never went back. But before I left, I made sure everyone knew I tipped them off. She would be arrested today, but in 1971, I deserved this petty revenge. I was a little sh*t to my 6th grade teacher in Catholic school. It was her first year teaching, and I pushed her limits every day. It was not my proudest year in school. On the last day of school, I squirted her with a squirt gun. Her eyes turned to violence, she grabbed me by the back of the neck, and she hissed, "Come with me." She marched me out of the classroom and down the hall. I was terrified, thinking I was going to be taken to the principal's office, an old nun we all feared and called the Goose. She marched me right up to a drinking fountain, forced my head into it, and turned on the water. She held my head there, soaking my hair thoroughly, then marched me back to class by the neck, still dripping. When she brought me into the classroom, my fellow students all laughed at me. I deserved it. Petty Portia Revenge. In a past life, I used to be a chiropractor, BGT, before a garbage truck hit me. Another story. I sub-rented office space from an established doctor, Drive-In. Turns out Drive-In was an obsessive neurotic narcissist who liked to dominate people, a total control freak. He pretended to be a nice, friendly boss, but actually he was quite cruel, and not the person he pretended to be. A couple points relevant to the revenge. He was obsessed with the Holocaust. He would buy the most detailed and graphic historical books and read them over and over, and then would rant about the injustice of the German government. He was smart enough not to do this with his patients, but since I was there a lot, I heard it all the time. He was also an avid street racer. He owned 2 or 3 Porsches and would drive them through the winding and narrow roads up into the hills. It was not uncommon for him to hit well over 100 miles per hour on roads where 45 was dangerous. He bragged a lot. People died on these roads all the time, mostly cyclists and motorcyclists hit by cars racing the turns, but he couldn't care less. He was obsessed with his cars as much as he was by the Holocaust. My petty revenge happened at a professional development conference. I was sitting next to him and his wife, also a chiro, and a handful of other chiros. Drive-In, as usual, would not stop talking, and eventually his monologue looped back to the Holocaust and then on to how the German government today is just as evil as it was during the Holocaust. He ended his rant by saying, "But what can you do about it?" I looked right in the eyes and totally deadpanned, "Well, I would start by not buying any more of their cars." His wife burst out laughing so hard I thought she might fall out of her chair. His face turned bright red, and for one of the few times ever, he had nothing to say. Literally, he gagged trying to say anything but could not get out a single words for almost a minute. After that he stopped talking about the Holocaust and Porsches to me, which was fine with me, smiley face. The only free cakes are ruined ones? Okay. In the early 2010s, I worked in a supermarket bakery/deli. Since most of my shifts were closing shifts, one of my tasks was to gather all of the expired bread, cakes, pastries, etc., and scan them out to be thrown away. Some days, this might be 1 or 2 loaves of bread, sometimes it was a pile of perfectly good, edible food. For example, the cinnamon buns had a 1-day sell date. If I baked them on Monday afternoon, I would need to throw them away Tuesday night. It was company policy at the time, as it is unfortunately a lot of places, that all food past its sell-by date had to be thrown in the trash. Employees were not allowed to take anything home for free, even if it was literally about to be thrown in a trash bag. They would need to pay for it. We also couldn't donate the food to food pantries, community groups, or homeless shelters. Early on, I even asked the store manager to clarify why we couldn't donate or give away the food, or take it ourselves. His response was that it was a liability, what if someone got sick, etc. It's all bullshit, I know. There are plenty of places like Panera Bread that give away day-old bread at the end of the night, and the vast majority of the food I threw away was still perfectly good. But store policy was store policy, and I could have gotten fired for stealing food about to be thrown away. Granted, I was a poor college student, so often I'd smuggle home small items that I could fit in my bag, like bagged rolls or cinnamon buns. A few months into the job, my bakery section supervisor was carrying a stack of sheet cakes out of the walk-in freezer, and one fell off the top. The plastic clamshell lid didn't come off, so no food touched the floor, but the cake inside was smashed and unsellable. She told me to mark the cake as shrink, product loss, and said I could put it in the employee break room. I realized in that moment that because the cake wasn't expired, just visually unappealing and unsellable, employees were allowed to eat it. Wouldn't you know it, after that I found myself becoming increasingly clumsy. And always with items that were set to expire the next day. I'd still have to throw away a truly egregious amount of food each night, but at least I could occasionally provide free cakes and pastries to my other minimum wage co-workers. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.